Football is finally back, and thank God for that. It seems like only yesterday that we are tuning into the Super Bowl, the draft, and just praying to God Almighty that the season actually rolls around and we can get out of the summer baseball schedule. If you're like me, you probably ended up tuning into these guys. Bunch of pretentious clowns on cable TV who pretend to really know what they're talking about, how principled they are, when honestly, they are not. They are basically the candy of the football world. They are not good for you. If you consume too much of it, it will damage you significantly, and you may not recover. But while you're waiting in between meals, they're not too shabby. Now, I am a part-time pundit, and that means that I'm a little bit of a nobody. So I'm just giving you guys what I found while I was digging through the data, just really thinking about these games, because I really do think that if I am correct, then there's only one way to possibly describe the season. And what's that? This season is gonna be bonkers. Let's start off with Kansas City. Kansas City, they have they're the Super Bowl champions. They got the MVP. And they're kicking off against the Lions, which seems like everybody, other than Lions fans, is kind of like shrugging a little bit. Like, oh, all right, yeah, sure, go with the Lions. Okay. And there are a ton of people, thinking that this game is already won. And I'm here to tell you that that the Kansas City Chiefs will go 1-2. I know. Come on, guys.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks.
I am not a hot take artist. I see a lot of warning flags for the Kansas City Chiefs in these first few games. Now, let's talk about the home opener first. To say Patrick Mahomes has been anything other than an absolute genius and absolute wizard would be lying to you. I mean, he's played phenomenal football. But here's the thing. They got 2 new offensive tackles, and the last time that Patrick Mahomes had to deal with a ton of different position change at the offensive line was the Super Bowl. And he got crushed. Another thing is that Chris Jones is still holding out. Yeah, still. I made my prediction video a while back. I'll have a link to that in the description. But Chris Jones, the holdout, may actually go to week 8 like he prophesied, which is bad news for the Kansas City Chiefs. And on top of it, the Detroit Lions, the last 2 years, have had phenomenal season-opening games. Like that 38-35 loss against the Eagles. Pretty easy to talk about how bad the Detroit defense was. That's the same score Philadelphia lost to Kansas City. So maybe the Lions actually do play some of their best football week 1, which would definitely be really interesting. Good job, Dan. Good job. You really got those guys dialed in. Now, the other team I have the Kansas City Chiefs losing to is the Chicago Bears. And this one, if you weren't already angry about the Lions winning, you're probably a little bit confused about this one. And that's because, A, Chris Jones holding out is a problem. It is still going to be a problem. You need somebody to actually go get Justin Fields. And if you don't have him, who's generating the pressure? I don't know. Plus, weird thing, you heard this a lot. The Kansas City Chiefs had a very young defense, which had a real trouble stopping dual-threat quarterbacks like Justin Herbert. Tore the defense to shreds. Now, here's another thing to consider. Yes, Jalen Hurts absolutely put up ridiculous numbers against that defense. But you know who also put up some pretty good numbers? The Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos actually scored points in a game. They scored more than 18 points. This guy. The Kansas City defense gave up those points to washed Russell Wilson. I mean, during the Broncos Chiefs games, Russell Wilson was actually a chef. He was cooking steak. He was cooking every sort of fancy meal instead of doing what he usually did, which was burn the Broncos organization to the ground. And I think Justin Fields is better than Russell Wilson was last year. Call me crazy, but I really think that's true. Now, while we're talking about some of these early starts, here's an interesting tip. If you want to go gamble, which I don't think you should, do not rely on my advice to gamble. But here's an interesting fact that I noticed looking back at some of last year's losses. Green Bay Packers, Tennessee Titans, Cincinnati Bengals, Las Vegas Raiders, Denver Broncos, New England Patriots. All of these were games that shocked a lot of people. So, what was the common thread, if there is any? Lots of moving offensive pieces that hadn't quite settled in. For the Green Bay Packers, they lost Davante Adams and they had new wide receivers. For the Tennessee Titans, no A.J. Brown, new wide receivers. Cincinnati Bengals, new offensive line. Las Vegas, new wide receiver. Davante Adams, new offensive coach. Denver Broncos, new quarterback and new coach. And New England, you've made a DC and an offensive coordinator for the first time in his career. So, that was just something really interesting that I thought about too. And there is one team that I think could have some problems in this opening game, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. They got Zay Flowers, new wide receiver. Odell, new wide receiver. New offensive coordinator. So I think the Texans are going to lose to the Baltimore Ravens. I got it a 27-24 game. I said the exact same thing in my prediction, but I figured this would be a good time to mention this again. Week 1 is going to surprise a lot of people, and it doesn't mean that your team is going to be bad. It doesn't mean your team is going to be great. Week 1 is just a completely unpredictable and volatile, especially if, for some reason, you don't play your starters at all in the preseason, not even one drive, when you got all those moving pieces. So we'll see what happens, but I really think that the Texans could surprise some people. Now, the Bengals are going to start the season 0-2. Look, I know there's a bunch of news now of the Bengals letting go of the quarterbacks because Joe Burrow is going to be good back to those games. But you know those opening games are against the Browns and Baltimore, right? Back-to-back divisional games. That is not easy, especially coming off of an injury where you're not having as much practice with the rest of the guys. We saw Joe Burrow look sluggish last year. Why don't we think that's going to be the exact same thing this year? So, I also have, this Monday Night Football game. Las Vegas, Detroit Lions. That's going to be interesting. Because I think the Raiders are going to really start hot. They're going to roll in with a 4-3 record and then get clowned. Get clowned on Monday Night Football for the world to see, leading to a collapse that cost Josh McDaniels his job. Yeah, Josh McDaniels will get fired. At least I think so by the end of the season. Because, look, even if Aiden O'Connell looks good as the fourth stringer, that is not why you brought Josh McDaniels in. You did not bring Josh McDaniels in to basically be back in a rebuild. You brought him to contend or at least get to the playoffs. And the Raiders are going to be another massive disappointment. He's already a little bit on the hot seat. I think this is the year he may actually go by the wayside. On a different note, the Buffalo Bills, I have them starting the season 5-3. Look, I have them losing to the New York Jets on Monday Night Football, and I know what I just said. I just said be wary of moving pieces, but the Buffalo Bills also have a ton of problems on their own, like with the whole Stephon Diggs drama. When it comes to the Buffalo Bills' chances,
very concerned. Yeah, very concerned.
Well said, Sean. Well said. I am not high on this team, especially now that Von Miller is going to be out for multiple weeks. He was supposed to be the missing piece. Guys, with the way the Buffalo Bills are currently constructed, they are not going to win a Super Bowl. They may not even win their division. They're going to need to do something to keep that window open, which is why I suspect they're going to end up being one of the teams that goes out and trades for an expensive running back. Now, I don't think this will save them from being squashed the next game. I have the Bengals-Buffalo Bills game being a shootout because, A, the Buffalo's defense is going to be a bad matchup against the Bengals. We saw that in the playoff game last year. But another thing to consider, the Bengals defense will also not be that great either because they are playing rookies and second-year guys because they lost Jesse Bates and Von Bell, among others. So, now which running back do I think the Buffalo Bills are going to grab? Because look, the Buffalo Bills adding a piece at the trade deadline is not going to change what's going to happen the immediate week after. We saw the 49ers, for example, trade for Christian McCaffrey, and they still did not quite, play well at all against Kansas City. But then eventually, once they got a little settled in, at like a couple weeks in, things got rolling. So I think Jonathan Taylor is probably going to be the one traded to Buffalo. I know what the Colts are saying. I hear what the Colts are saying. I do not believe what the Colts are saying at all. Mainly because of this whole whale drama. Jim Irsay spending all this money for the whale, only for Lolita to pass away. Rest in peace, Lolita. Lolita the orca. Rest in peace. Which, it is hard to see, because you hate seeing anything die. But you know what? At least we know Jim Irsay had the money to not pay Jonathan Taylor. So I do think that the Buffalo Bills are a team that if they start off sluggish and they look at the rest of that schedule, they see the Jets, the Patriots, the Dolphins on their tail, that they do something desperate. And I really think that this is going to happen. Don't be surprised if the Buffalo Bills do something very like this. Now, the worst NFL teams in the league, I have these 4 teams, mainly because, A, I think the Raiders are going to collapse at the end, and then Devontae Adams may, want to get out of there. And the Cardinals, Colts, Washington, those are some more interesting picks. Colts, I know Anthony Richardson is going to be good, but I feel like it would be, this year for them would be a lot more like Chicago was last year, where, yeah, without any of your stars, like even potentially your running back, things are going to get difficult. Now, Arizona is the one that is completely crazy to me because they just got rid of Colt McCoy, who was a Cleveland Browns quarterback, to go trade for Josh Dobbs, another Cleveland quarterback, and while Gamer Boy here is recovering from his ACL. I mean, the Cardinals are just openly tanking. How is this allowed? How is this allowed in this league? I mean, they also have the Texans' first-round pick next year. But Washington is another one to keep your eye on. Washington has a really, really tough schedule to start out. So they play week 1 against Arizona, which in theory should be a win because, again, the Cardinals are tanking. But then they got Denver Broncos, Buffalo Bills, Philadelphia Eagles, Chicago Bears, and then maybe Atlanta's a little bit of a gimme. But then again, the Atlanta added pieces. Then you got some more divisional games. Giants, Eagles. This team going in the trade deadline could have only 2 wins. That is a real possibility here. And if that's the case, after all this drama with Eric Bieniemy, maybe you just strip the thing down and embrace the tank bowl. So you have a good quarterback for sure to compete with Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts in your division. Now, the very worst NFL team, I got to go with the Cardinals here. Basically, the whole quarterback situation kind of solidified it for me. I mean, if you wanted to win, you would have kept the quarterback that you would have had through the training camp, not trade for one at the last second who has to learn an entirely new offensive scheme. But hey, what do I know? I'm just some idiot sitting in a chair. Now, the division winners, I don't have any surprises here in the division winners, mainly because I am assuming that the Buffalo Bills actually decided to trade for a running back. If the Buffalo Bills don't do a trade like that, I don't think they're winning the division. But here's the way I have it working out. I have the Buffalo Bills being the 1 seed, but I have Kansas City being the 4 seed and Jacksonville being the 3. Main reason here, scheduling. Kansas City has a tough road to hoe. I think if I'm correct and they go 1-2 to start the season, their margin for error is very, very low. And they got some tough games like against the New York Jets that Kansas City may be in a bit of an interesting tussle. Now, don't give me this nonsense about how the AFC West is good. The AFC West is not good. They are not. That is a bad division. It was a bad division last year. It was a bad division the year before. The only good thing is Kansas City. Now, is it possible that some of those teams, like the Broncos, the Chargers, some of those guys maybe steal a couple wins to give them that record? It's absolutely possible, but they're not winning the division from Mahomes. And Trevor, the Jacksonville Jaguars have a great schedule. But I have the Bengals winning the tiebreaker and getting over the top here. I just think the Bengals are a better team. I really do. Now, the wild card teams, I got the Jets, Ravens, and the New England Patriots, which is probably surprising to a lot of you. I think the Jets are actually going to be pretty good. I like the vibes coming out of there. And if I am correct and they start 1-0 against the Buffalo Bills, then they go into Dallas. Aaron Rodgers has owned the Dallas Cowboys. Any Green Bay Packers fan could tell you that. Rodgers owns the Cowboys. They owned them last year when the Packers were bad and Dallas was a 12-win team. So the Jets could start 2-0 and have really good vibes for the rest of the season. Ravens, I know I have them losing that first game, but they're going to be a good squad once that offense kind of starts to gel a little bit towards the mid end of the season. And the Patriots, I really think they're going to be better once they get rid of old Butchin here as the offensive coordinator. I mean, plus, if I pick New England to be the 7th seed, we can bring back the meme.
Yeah, well, we're on to Cincinnati.
Get it? Because they'll be on to Cincinnati. They're on to Cincinnati. So on the NFC side, this is the way I see the divisions breaking down. San Francisco, look, the AFC North is going to be tough. I have them losing a couple of games like to the Steelers and to the Bengals. But other than that, I mean, their division is kind of in a rebuild mode. Their schedule is pretty workable. And the Eagles, not so much. The Eagles have a really tough road to hoe. The Lions, I think 11 wins for the Lions team with that schedule is incredibly realistic. And the Panthers are going to be better than people think. The NFC South is going to surprise people. Everybody thinks everyone's going to have a losing record in there again, or it's just going to be absolute trash. It's not. They're going to be fine. They're not going to be great, but that division overall is going to be fine. Now, wildcard-wise, I have the Bears, Saints, and Vikings. I know in my prediction video, I had the Vikings beating the Saints, so they would technically be the 6th seed. I don't think we're going to get a divisional matchup recreation in the playoffs like we did last year or the year before. We had a bit of a long run with that, and I just don't see that happening. So that's how I kind of have it shaken out so far. Now, who will win the NFL MVP? I'm going to say it's Joe Burrow, mainly because, that defense for the Bengals is not going to be great. Joe Burrow is going to have to be a stat machine in order to win some of those games, and I think he will, especially if that offensive line is better. Second reason is because of this stupid guy. This pack of crushed hopes and dreams is Mike Brown, owner of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Joe Burrow still does not have a contract extension, nor does T. Higgins, which, if it was any other franchise, it would be a little bit more easy to shrug off. But with the Bengals, the cheap Bengals, there's a real chance that he's trying to keep all the booty to himself, and Burrow's going to need to actually play really well in order to pry from his cold, dead hands. So, that is not a good spot to be in. So, I think there's a chance that helps motivate the Bengals either in the playoffs or Joe Burrow in the regular season. Because I don't know why this extension isn't done yet either. There's not a lot of people talking about it, but this extension, it was supposed to be done by now, and it's not. So that is a huge, huge concern. Now, just for kicks and giggles, I already told you guys the teams. Let's fill out a bracket. Let's have a little fun, March Madness style. So, no upsets in the first round. We saw what happened to Raven. There's some bad voodoo when the Ravens play at Jacksonville. Patriots Bengals could be interesting, but or New York and Kansas City. But I think Arrowhead's such a strong home field advantage. Unless you are Joe Burrow or Tom Brady, you're not winning in Arrowhead in the playoffs against Patrick Mahomes. Now, this next round here, I would have the Buffalo Bills using their home field advantage getting on top. Look, this is all predicated on the notion that they get a running back. If the Buffalo Bills get a good running back, and they got Von Miller healthy and home field advantage, I think they got a shot. I really do against Kansas City. At Arrowhead, no chance. But if it's home and you got all these new pieces, I think you can win. And Jacksonville, Cincinnati, look, Joe Burrow's owned Trevor Lawrence throughout college and the pros. I don't expect that to change anytime soon, and I just don't trust the rest of Jacksonville's roster. I know Trevor Lawrence is good, but I just don't. I don't believe in the rest of the unit. I think they still got a little bit of rebuilding specifically on the defense to do, and you should probably get maybe a really, really good wide receiver, not your piecemeal squad. Now, between these two in the AFC Championship game, I think it would be pretty likely that the Buffalo Bills get revenge. They'll have that Cancun on 3 and the nonsense Eli Apple did in the back of their head and getting clowned on in the entire offseason. I think that would be a game that Buffalo would enact revenge. Now, on the NFC side, let's have some fun here. I would have only one upset here in the wild card, just because I don't I think Bryce Young is going to be good, but expect him to win a playoff game even at home as a rookie year is a lot to ask. And at this point, I think Justin Fields and the Bears are going to be playing with a little bit of confidence because nobody would have expected them to get here. So on this front, though, I have the Lions upsetting the Eagles because, as I told you before, they actually matched up really well with the Eagles last year, and they got a lot better. Eagles lost a lot of pieces. I don't think Philadelphia is going to get back to the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl again. Now, between the Lions and San Francisco, again, if you paid attention earlier in the video, San Francisco and the Lions played 2 years ago, and it was a decent matchup for the Lions, and I expect this to go similar way where the Lions win. Maybe it's like maybe there's a trick play to Jameson Williams thrown in there too for good measure. Who knows? But I think this is one that the Lions would win. And for Super Bowl 58, one of these teams is going to be the winner for the first time in its history. And that would be, in my opinion, the Detroit Lions. Mainly because that Madden curse is very real. Something is going to happen to Josh Allen. I do not know what it is. But something is going to happen. We've watched this too many times before. And another interesting note, we've had a lot of weird coincidences since 2020. Tampa Bay, they hosted the Super Bowl, and they won basically a home playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Rams, LA was hosting the Super Bowl. They got to it, and they won. But then everyone started catching on. People were getting smart. Oh, hey, you know what? Arizona's gonna win it this year because they're hosting the Super Bowl. But Patrick Mahomes won it. But you know what the weird coincidence was this time? Kansas City hosted the NFL Draft. Do you know who hosts the NFL Draft next year? The Detroit Lions. If you believe in weird coincidences or the NFL being rigged, may I introduce to you the newest trend for the Super Bowl. Mark it down, folks. Maybe the Detroit Lions win it. Or, maybe I'm completely wrong. And instead of Dan Campbell being worshipped as a god, the Madden curse is so strong that it takes the Buffalo Bills into a real bender. Aaron Rodgers wins a 5th MVP, number 1 seed, chokes in the AFC Championship game, and the Bengals beat the Cowboys in the Super Bowl, because who the heck even knows? Anyways, guys, this is going to be the end of the video. I just thought it'd be nice to make a little fun prediction video before the season. Once that rolls around, we're going to have some really, really fun stuff to talk about. So, hopefully, you guys enjoyed the video. So, I'll see you guys on the next upload.